India is the world's third-largest energy consumer. With a rapidly expanding population, keeping the economy running requires a continuous influx of imported fossil fuels. Relying heavily on foreign energy leaves the country exposed. As recent conflicts in the Middle East have shown, global supply chain disruptions can immediately threaten domestic economic stability. To secure true energy sovereignty, the Department of Atomic Energy has set an aggressive target, scaling the country's nuclear capacity from 8,180 megawatts today to 100 gigawatts by 2047. This map highlights the primary geological roadblock to that plan. India possesses merely 1 to 2% of the world's naturally occurring uranium reserves. But looking at alternative elements, the equation flips. India controls more than 25% of the global reserves of thorium. Utilizing that domestic thorium is the obvious path to long-term energy independence. But standard reactors cannot burn it. Engineers have to construct an entirely different class of machine to process the material. This is the Kalpakkam nuclear complex in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. It is the site of India's most advanced atomic energy project. Recently, the 500-megawatt Prototype Fast Breeder Reactor located here reached criticality. Criticality is the precise operational stage where a nuclear chain reaction can continue entirely on its own, without external intervention. Once fully operational, this achievement makes India only the second country after Russia to operate a commercial-scale fast breeder reactor. This reactor represents Stage 2 of India's three-stage nuclear strategy. It is the necessary linchpin designed specifically to bridge the technical gap between uranium consumption and thorium utilization. To map India's geopolitical energy strategy, we must first examine the precise physics happening inside the reactor core. This flowchart illustrates Stage 1 of India's nuclear program. It relies on standard pressurized heavy water reactors. Like most conventional reactors globally, these units consume natural uranium to generate electricity for the grid. After the natural uranium fuel is completely spent, the process leaves behind highly radioactive waste, containing a new element called plutonium. Stage 1 presents two serious limitations. It rapidly burns through the country's scarce domestic uranium, and it generates hazardous waste that requires massive geological disposal facilities. The physical makeup of that waste offers a solution. Plutonium is highly fissile. If extracted, it can be used as the primary fuel source for a next-generation reactor. Overcoming the limitations of heavy water reactors requires shifting away from a linear model of consumption. The system must become a closed loop of recycling. That recycling loop begins with Stage 2, the fast breeder reactor. A breeder is an advanced system that actually produces more fissile fuel than it consumes. Instead of standard uranium, the Kalpakkam reactor uses the spent plutonium from Stage 1, mixing it into what is called MOX, or mixed oxide fuel. Inside the reactor architecture, the MOX fuel sits in the very center, completely surrounded by a protective blanket of uranium-238. This is the most abundant, naturally occurring isotope of uranium. Crucially, it is non-fissile by itself, unable to independently sustain a chain reaction. When the central MOX fuel fissions to generate tower, it forcefully ejects high-energy stray neutrons outward into the surrounding material. When those stray neutrons hit the outer blanket, the uranium-238 captures them. This alters the atomic structure of the material, turning the inert uranium into highly fissile plutonium. This process is called nuclear transmutation. It is what puts the breeder in fast breeder. As it generates electricity, it continuously breeds fresh, usable plutonium out of inert rock. By converting spent waste into a self-replenishing fuel supply, the reactor mathematically breaks the traditional rules of energy scarcity. Breeding plutonium from uranium solves the immediate fuel shortage, but the broader strategy involves applying these same physics to utilize thorium. Once a sufficient network of Stage 2 reactors is operational, the same transmutation process can be adapted for new elements. Engineers will systematically remove the uranium-238 blankets and replace them with blankets made of natural thorium. As the central core fires, the neutrons will bombard the new thorium blanket. The thorium captures the neutrons and transmutates into uranium-233, a highly potent fissile isotope. This leads directly to Stage 3. A final fleet of advanced reactors will run entirely independent of natural uranium, fed by a continuous, closed loop of thorium and the uranium-233 it produces. The Kalpakkam facility provides the necessary mechanical bridge to initiate a localized thorium-powered industrial base. The physics of transmutation offer a clear path forward on paper, but executing that science in the real world presents severe economic headwinds. The construction of the Kalpakkam reactor officially began in 2004. It took more than 2 decades of complex engineering delays just to achieve initial criticality. This chart illustrates the lag in execution. While India spent over 20 years bringing its prototype online, China recently built a similar, slightly larger fast breeder reactor in only 6 years. Prolonged gestation periods compound financial risk. Over the 20-year build time, the construction costs for the Kalpakkam reactor expanded to more than double the initial estimate. Those capital expenditures directly affect the consumer. Electricity generated by this advanced facility will cost 80% more than power pulled from standard heavy water reactors. Scientific breakthroughs lose their strategic value if the resulting energy is too expensive to scale across a developing economy. This domestic economic challenge is playing out against a shifting global market. Worldwide reliance on nuclear power is actively contracting, dropping from 17.5% of total electricity in 1996 to just 9% today. The primary force outpricing atomic energy is modern renewables. Over that same period, global electricity generated by non-hydro renewables surged from 1% to over 17%. Highly complex, multi-decade breeder programs are now directly competing against massive solar networks that feature rapidly falling costs and immediate deployment capabilities. To hit the target of 100 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2047, the Department of Atomic Energy will have to scale its operations far faster than current bureaucratic timelines allow. The Kalpakkam Fast Breeder Reactor establishes the technical feasibility of indigenous scientific engineering, demonstrating the capacity required to process domestic thorium. Securing true energy sovereignty depends on scaling these physics. Success requires moving from rigorous science to aggressive, economically viable project execution.